Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent, and in this episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show, we talk about Adventure League and the Season 9 rules, as well as an odd, older spell called Delay Death. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Saturday morning in June. Sun is out, summer's out, but that's also a good time to still game. So I hope you're gaming.
Yeah, lots and lots of games. I'm playing games
I am.
today, lots of games. We're doing this, and then I'm streaming over on the Greyhawk channel for a new show that I forgot the name of, but if I look at Twitter, it should tell me.
Quickly.
Nope, it doesn't tell me, but it's called like this. Oh, man, I feel bad now. Anyway.
Should have put it in the notes.
I should have put it in the notes.
Always put it in the notes.
Oh, it's in... This makes for really, really great television, guys. Seekers of the Scorpion Crown is what we are playing. So Faerun Jordan, Forgotten Realms Jordan, is going to the Greyhawk for a little while. But we're playing BX D&D, which is like basic, like original D&D that came out. Well, this is like an updated version of the original rules that came out in the early 80s, I think. And Lex Mandrake's running at Dink Dungeons TV, so he's really, really excited for it. And we had to make 3 characters because he's afraid that our characters are going to die very quickly. So I made a fighter, a cleric, and an elf. And I think I'm going to play the cleric first, and then if my cleric dies, I will switch over to something else. But
I like how Indoor Adventure calls you traitor because you're going to play in Greyhawk, but I think that just means if you play a game in Greyhawk, that means you have to do some lore videos of Greyhawk now. So it's part of the contract. So.
Yeah, that could be.
The new Greyhawk Explains channel coming to you this summer. No,
yeah. I don't know if that'll happen. I've been reading a little bit about it because as a cleric, I was reading up the deities and stuff to see which one I want. And it's just another, just like the Forgotten Realms was when I first started, it's this rabbit hole of information that you're like, oh my gosh.
There's so much.
And that's when I started with my channel is I was like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. Somebody should organize all of this into a healthy YouTube series. So there you go. That's exactly how my last channel started. So maybe this will
and playing basic Dungeons and Dragons. That's old school as old school gets. That's OSR as OSR gets. It's back when the game was very interesting to play. Very lethal, very clunky, very not modular.
Lex put it really well where he said that, current 5th edition D&D, monsters tend to have more hit points and lower AC. So you hit more often, but you kind of like chip away at this monster. But he said in BX D&D that a lot of the monsters have really high AC and few hit points. So like nobody hits, but then that one wizard gets a dagger stab and he ends up killing the monster.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of... It's a different.
So it's harder to hit, but when you do, it's more lethal, which I do kind of like. It changes the dynamic of the game.
It does. It's very, it's just kind of, it puts, I don't know, like I'm wondering if you feel like you are doing something, if you actually land hits, and that's why the mentality was changed for 5th edition D&D. Or even 3.5 in earlier editions, but the idea of like people want to hit, they want to know that they're actually doing something, and then this earlier version, it was like, well, it's actually really difficult to hit. So, but I loved Dungeon Crawl Classics, and so Lex kind of said he's like, you're probably gonna love this too, and I was like, oh, and it's part of my goal is in 2019 I wanted to try and play earlier editions of D&D, like you were talking about wanting to play 4th edition, which we should still do, and I should run a 4th edition game for you, a one shot. And I played 2nd edition advanced D&D, but I never played 3rd edition, so I kind of want to try a 3rd edition game too.
I played a bunch of 3 and 3.5, played a bunch of AD&D. I skipped 4 for somehow. It was just like that was the most. It wasn't because it was I was on the fence or I was on the bandwagon of it's not good or it is good or whatever. It was my whole life. I think I went to computer gaming and I was doing MMO gaming. So World of Warcrafts and all that happens during when 4th edition gets released. So I'm not even into tabletop RPGs at least for 3 or 4, maybe 10 years there. And then I'm like, no, I want to get back into it. And what's funny is it probably correlates to the down slope of MMOs for me, because there was in the early 2000s, MMOs are on the rise. Everybody's making one. There's a bunch of them out there you can play. A bunch of franchises are doing them, and they're really good. And but you've got to sink hours and hours and hours into those types of games. And I think that probably pulled me away from the tabletop stuff. But now there's only like 1 or 2 out there that are interesting to me. Most aren't anymore. They're on the slide. And now I'm back into tabletop role-playing games all of a sudden. So I think that was my correlation for how
no,
it worked.
I played a lot of MMOs, or one MMO in particular I played a lot of. And I found that tabletop games filled that MMO itch or that niche for me. And it was just less time intensive and more fun, and you're actually like hanging out with real people. Not that because I made internet friends, you make friends when you play MMOs. But I don't know, it's like I look back and I'm like, I should have been playing tabletop RPGs this whole time rather than sinking 5 years into an MMO, but 6 1 half a dozen the other. Anyway, lots of fun. We have some news to talk about. Oh, also, I wanted to say I was really excited that my channel hit 50,000 subscribers as of this morning. Yay. So that's really cool. So we're halfway to 100, which is the really cool one, because YouTube sends you a plaque that says congratulations on getting 100. So not that I'm jonesing for that or anything, but it's just really cool to see the channel grow and to see that. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to me and follows me on the Jordan Forgotten Realms Explained channel. That's really cool. I just released a really fun video about rules, and it's a D&D quiz show featuring some podcasters and other YouTubers. So you should check that out. And then this Wednesday, I will be doing part 2 of the quiz show with different contestants. And I just finished editing that last night, and it's all uploaded and the thumbnail's done. So it's just currently waiting to be published on Wednesday, which is really exciting to have an entire weekend free of editing.
Dude, nice. That means you just game. You just concentrate on gaming.
I can just concentrate on gaming because I'm doing the show, and then after the show at 1 p.m. Pacific, we're doing the Greyhawk show, and then at after that show is done, at 4 or 5, I'm going to my friend's house to play actual D&D, which we usually play on Sundays, but we couldn't play on Sunday, so we switched it to Saturday night tonight. So I'm going to go over there and play D&D. So it's just going to be this long day of Dungeons & Dragons, which is amazing. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the Lucian version of the show, I got to do the test run while he was testing out
the quiz show, yeah.
So we got to run through it, and I argue too much. So he was able to narrow his questions to be more perfect, I think, for the people that he was going to ask. So you probably won't see me answering them, but I didn't get 100% either. And
maybe I'll make a Lucian. I did record you, though, I think. Maybe I should make a Lucian only video, and we can put it up on the Saturday morning D&D show. But no, and thank you for that. That was really awesome, because I was I need to test these. And then you were just no, I think it works like this. And you helped me get the questions right, because if I got these questions wrong, the internet backlash would have been awful. I'm already getting it where people are just no, Jordan, Action Surge gives you an extra bonus action. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I quadruple checked, guys. It doesn't give you an extra bonus action. You literally get one bonus action. So stop arguing with me.
Stop at me.
Stop at me, guys. It's pretty good. So fun, though, and I'm really proud of that video. So if you haven't checked it out, I think you guys will enjoy it, and I think you'll especially enjoy the next Wednesday one, because I took a lot of the constructive criticism that people had about the first quiz show video and improved on the second one. So,
well, I even mentioned on Twitter, not to harp on the video at all, or even to keep talking about it, because we got all the other stuff, but I thought it was really cool because it shows people who are dungeon masters who do run games, it's okay not to know every single rule and still be a good dungeon master and still be able to play, because all our games are really good. Our players love our games. Even if I got one or two of those rules wrong, it doesn't matter. The game still plays. And that's, I think, what people should take from it. It's nice to know the answers, and it's cool if you learn something, if you're like, hey, I didn't know that's how that actually worked. Like, there were 2 things in there that I picked up that I had no idea. The +2 bonus cover when somebody's between you and the other person, I somehow had missed that whole time. I thought it didn't matter at all, and it was in there. So it's pretty cool. I got to add that into my game and use it. But it's the idea that even if you get it wrong, you can still have a fun game. It's okay if you change a rule or you forget a rule. Just keep the game going and have fun with it. And I think that's how the contestants took it.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, that was the point. And I had some contestants that were just like, so what are you doing? Like, what are you aiming at? Cause they were thinking like, you're trying to make me look bad or something. And I was like, oh, no, that is not the case. It's totally what I want people to take away from the video is that, anyone can be a dungeon master. You don't have to know the rules. And like, I think Celeste got like a 68 or a 70% on hers, and
even Nate's wasn't very high.
And she's the dungeon master for the Venture Maidens. She runs an actual play D&D 5e podcast. But that's the thing is like you look up rules when you need to look up rules, but you rule them on the fly and just have fun and keep going.
Yeah, or we have a lot of home rules that we use, and then we typically forget what the old rule was that we changed, so that all of a sudden when we're asked what that is, we might not remember what it is. We just know how we do it now, right? We're like, I know we changed grappling for some reason. We didn't like the way something worked about it, so we just this way. But when somebody asks me the grappling rule, I have to think, okay, this is how the grappling rule works. So yeah, I think it'd be, but I do think it's a good way. It's not to make people look bad, but for these people that are doing advice shows and then they show up on the quiz show, I think it is fun for them to at least try to kind of put up or shut up a little bit about, being able to give advice to people and, actually knowing the rules and stuff.
And collabs on YouTube are always fun. So I've done a couple of collaborations in the past, and they're just a blast. So this was also fun. So
it's good.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about Jordan and his channel. But what's going on in the world of D&D news?
That guy. So we pretty slow again. We're a couple weeks past the Descent, the big 2019 live event. They did say they're already starting to work on the 2020 live event. They're in the meetings and the plannings for that, which makes sense because we already know through just them always saying it, they have a pipeline that's 2, 3, or maybe even 4 years already planned out what books they want to come out with. That's how far ahead they are. So I bet they already know what book goes for the live 2020, and they just haven't told us yet.
Absolutely. Cool. I bet they know books like 5 years out.
So they've got a lot of content already in the pipeline, so that's cool. So we saw a couple of lore you should know videos, which are always cool. We love lore stuff. They talked about the warlords of Avernus, and they talked about the Hell Riders, which is I hadn't really heard much about them, but it's a group that's near Baldur's Gate and has some interaction with Baldur's Gate. So if you're looking to see some more lore that has to do with that, I didn't know if you'd heard them or come across any of those two while you were doing any of your lore videos. Does Hell Riders or any of them show up for you?
Nope. I'll be honest with you. It was all like news to me, and I wonder if it's lore that they're creating now. Rather than diving into older stuff, but I didn't watch the videos, so I'm not sure.
No, most of it sounded like it was, they talked about when it started to come, when they started talking about it or what version that, and it sounds like a lot of it's older stuff. It's just stuff I hadn't heard, because I think it's because I haven't adventured around Baldur's Gate that much. So there hasn't been a lot of need for me to go and find that lore, but I've done a ton of Waterdeep. So understanding what's around Waterdeep, I know a lot of that stuff, Long Saddle and, all these other Yarter and, just that whole area is filled with all the adventures that they've done. So you get a lot of history out of that area. Or if you get the Dales, if you're talking about Elminster and where they're from and Cormyr and all that, there's a lot of books that were based on that. So I got a lot of that. But I haven't done a lot of Baldur's Gate because I didn't play the video game. Now, I think you did quite a bit. You play a lot of the Baldur's Gate video game.
No, I played... There must
be a lot of lore in there, right?
Well, here's the thing is I played... So just so people know, I played half of the first one And I got distracted because that is my curse with video games, is I get very distracted. And I hear the second one is infinitely better. Not that the first one was bad, but I hear the second one will actually like grab you and hold you because it's really good. So I haven't started that yet. But I do know the story of it because I made a video on Baldur's Gate. But the video game of Baldur's Gate doesn't have a lot of lore in it. It's actually just a story that takes place in Baldur's Gate. Kind of like Neverwinter Nights is the same thing. Like Neverwinter Nights, I mean, there are cities, like there's temples and stuff in Neverwinter Nights where you're like, oh, this is in Neverwinter and here's the different districts of Neverwinter. But for the most part, it's a story that takes place in Forgotten Realms that just happened to like start or is around Baldur's Gate is kind of the idea.
Yeah. I think that's why I haven't seen
the history of Baldur's Gate is actually really interesting. And if you're interested in that more, I did make a lore video on it, which leads us to
the next news item, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So definitely go check out those lore you should knows. It's a lot of stuff about Baldur's Gate and Descent to Avernus.
But specific, before we jump ahead, you wrote in our notes here the soul coin. Like, what was the lore about that?
The two things that I thought were interesting that grabbed me is they talked more about the soul coin itself and how it works and what it is.
Because it's the currency of Avernus,
of
right?
hell. Yeah. Of at least the first layer. But it did sound like it might be the currency of other layers too. It may not be all of the layers, but some of it. And how it came about and how each coin isn't just like it's a certain value of XP or gold pieces or whatever. It's like whoever that soul is trapped inside that coin makes it as valuable as it might be. So if it's a paladin of a good god, that's way more valuable as a soul coin than say the one that's of, some super evil person.
Yeah.
Right? That's nothing for them. That's a small soul
because
coin.
That was easy soul to get.
Same, but that soul is already evil. But if they get a good paladin, that makes it. So I thought the way they described that, if you're wanting to get into what the soul coin was, there's a good video where they dive into that, and they talk about the war machines more in that. So if you want to get more of an idea of what's going on with the war machines, because I think many people are interested in that portion of that adventure. So it'd be cool to hear more about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just pointing those out, that they go into more detail with those two things, though I didn't really, I didn't pick out anything I hadn't heard yet, but I just thought if you haven't heard it, go check those two videos out. And that's on the D&D YouTube channel. You can just watch those.
Yeah.
But then we saw the news that came out that they are doing a computer game, Baldur's Gate 3, which is pretty big. There's a huge following of people that loved, like you said, critically acclaimed Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate 1, or the Neverwinter games. And so they're going to jump in and do Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I haven't done any of those. So I don't have much more to add to that, but I know it's coming and I know a lot of people are excited about it.
I played Divinity Original Sin 1 and really liked it. And I hear Divinity Original Sin 2. I need to play the second one. Same with Baldur's Gate 2, because they said that one was amazing, super great.
When you play it, let me know, because I want to jump in with you, because it lost me in the first hour of it, and I couldn't get going in it. So I don't know if maybe I'm playing at the same time as somebody else and we can figure things out.
Yeah, because if we played together, that could be a lot of fun. We should do that.
Yeah, it could be good.
But it's the same company that made that. And it seems like, because we got a game called Sword Coast Legends that was kind of supposed to be like 5th edition rules, isometric RPG, but it turns out that it wasn't 5th edition rules. It was like skill trees and kind of their own RPG thing. And I don't know why they didn't make it like 5th edition rules, or if they just didn't want to at the time. But it sounds like Baldur's Gate 3 will be like definitive, rolling dice behind, like how Neverwinter Nights was for 3.5, like rolling dice behind the attacks and stuff, and actually having random number generators create hits and things like that, and using the 5th edition math to build the language of the game. So it looks really cool. If you haven't seen it, there's a really awesome trailer for, it's not any gameplay, but it's just a full motion video trailer. But it shows the Ceramorphosis, which is the process of a human being turning into a mind flare, because that's how we get new mind flares, is they implant little slugs in your brain that eat your brain and eventually change your whole body into what a mind flare is. And that's how mind flares reproduce. It's really creepy. We've never actually like seen it before. And so it was just like, oh, that's different. And like, okay, that man's dead now. Interesting. Really, really awesome trailer. It was super exciting. But yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 has such a huge following that it kind of made sense to do another Baldur's Gate game. And I think with this production company doing that, made a Divinity Original Sin, they already have like really good game making skills to then take and apply all of the 5th edition rules to. So it could be a match made in heaven. It might be this really awesome 5th edition video game that we're waiting for. So it reminds me of was it Kingmaker Pathfinder?
Yeah.
Pathfinder, that was the same thing where it was an isometric RPG, but it used the Pathfinder rule set, which was really popular. So
yeah. Going back to Sword Coast Legends, they had it on Steam for a while, and then I saw a message that said we're going to be taking the game down. So if you want to buy it now before it goes away. So I think if you go to Steam and try to get it now, you can't. But I picked it up, and I haven't played much of it. It's one of my, hopefully down the road, I want to play maybe on the channel, is that Sword Coast Legends. But I also they had a Tomb of Annihilation one.
It's a different game.
Tomb of Annihilation game. They're different, but yeah, same material, but different style games. But I thought those would be cool things that might show up on our channel at some point if we played through them or goofed around with them, just to see the digital versions of the Dungeons & Dragons thing. I did play Neverwinter online. In that one, we played for a little bit, and it's an interesting one. It didn't capture me for more than, say, a month or so, but I know there's a lot of people that still play it, and they put out tons of content for it. So it's great that we're seeing more computer games come out, even though we're still kind of in that renaissance of the kind of the tabletop role-playing game. I think it's really cool. And I think I was watching Jim Zub did a TED Talk that he had mentioned on Twitter. So I went and watched it. I don't know how long ago he did it, but it wasn't too long ago. And he had mentioned that the rise of tabletop role-playing games, they think in the last few years has been kind of we went through this phase of playing computer games and being a little bit more isolated. And now people are wanting to get back to that communal, sitting around the table, hanging out and playing with each other kind of mode. So we're kind of going back to that analog version of the game, because we had fun with the digital stuff, but there's something about the analog that also we seem to want or we enjoy. And
I 100% agree. I think that's exactly what it is that we just, so many nights was spent by yourself in front of your TV with a controller. And you like talk to other people over the internet, but it's just a lot more fun to have, let's invite the Smiths over and we can play a romping game of Tomb of Annihilation or something. And then that in turn, like, it's kind of funny because you have like RPGs, and then video games made all of their RPG-ness based on the pen and paper RPGs. And now it's come full circle where people who grew up with RPGs and video games are like, we can play this on pen and paper. This is cool. And they like, it's come full circle.
Yeah, and it's called kind of the next point I was going to make that Jim had brought up. These aren't my own points. I was listening to Jim Zub talk about it, but it was this other idea. And I think we'd all come to it if we thought about it, was this idea is that when you play digital versions of any of these things, they're great games, but typically you're playing their story. For the most part, very few of them are sandbox enough that it's your story. Whereas when you finally get to sit around the table, or you're doing Roll20 or however you play your Dungeons and Dragons, you're playing a story that hasn't been written yet. You have the players, you have the pieces. Even the dungeon master doesn't necessarily know where the story is going to go, because that dice roll could change anything. And you don't have that necessarily in a computer game, which has a little bit more linear kind of storyline that you're playing. Still good, still valid, still fun to play, just a different experience. And I think those are the two that a lot of us are longing for, that idea that we're creating a story together, and it's a story none of us know how it's going to actually end. We might have an idea, but anything could happen. A one could be rolled 2-3 times in a row, and everything could change for what we thought it was going to do. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, super cool. And I agree.
So the other thing that I noticed, we saw some previews of the season 9 Adventures League rules are out there for you to take a look at.
Which will be Descent into Avernus, correct? That's season 9?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah, because Saltmarsh, I believe, is an agnostic one. I think it works for any. So the adventures they put out for Adventure League right now are outside of the seasons. And then Descent is the first season 9 one. So they're calling, seasons 1 through 8 characters, or if you want to create a character that's going to play in that content, that you're basically creating what they call a legacy character. And then everything after that for the 9 would be a regular character at this point. They had a nice infographic on the website where they talked about the differences between the two and the things that you could do or can't do depending on what season content you're playing. So I definitely recommend you go take a look at that. The things that stood out to me, and then you can definitely say whatever you thought was interesting there. Checkpoint XP is still there, but it's by objective. So we got that for the first time in season 8, that we got the checkpoint XP. And I think that a lot of people liked it enough, and they're going to stick with it in season 9. The difference being checkpoint XP was by hour you played in season 8, whereas in season 9, it's by objective awarded in the adventures. So whoever's making the adventures are deciding if they've done this, you get a checkpoint point. If you did this objective, you get a point. So I think that's pretty good, because you can say, maybe this adventure has 5 total possible objectives, maybe a main objective that's worth 2 points, but there's some tertiary things that you could do that might earn you some extra stuff, whether you do it or not. Maybe that's how it's going to be. I haven't seen their adventures yet for the season 9, but I think that's kind of a cool way to do it, not tie it necessarily to hours, because sometimes we could do a shopping episode, or we could do a very intense RP episode where we didn't get a lot done, but we had a lot of fun talking to NPCs, and maybe it went on for longer than it needed to, but our group was just having a good time. We weren't necessarily earning arbitrary amounts of XP because we had a 5-hour RP session. I think the idea is it's better to tie it to things getting done versus just amount of time, or versus what did you kill, right? So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction for the type of XP that we're able to get now. The other thing that stood out to me, treasure checkpoints are still there, but that's a little bit different. That was a contentious point for season 8. If you go online and look at a lot of people talking about how that worked, that one is still, or was in seasons 8, was by hours you played. But this one's going to be by story or bonus objective. And there is a cap that you can only earn so much, and any that you would have earned past that is just not acquired. So they're trying to limit the amount that you could possibly earn during a session also. So they're keeping an eye on how much of that gold you're trying to earn. Other than that, I noticed I'll let you bring up the point you added onto there, because I think that's a good one too, which we get in season 9. So those are the things that stood out to me. What about you? What stood out to you as far as season 9 additions?
And I'll be honest, I skimmed this, and I skimmed the players. I didn't skim the Dungeon Master one because I was more curious about playing than being a Dungeon Master, but there is a special racial trait. So season 9 characters created during the season 9 receive the following racial traits. And if you're a tiefling, at level 5, you can replace the tiefling's infernal legacy trait with the winged trait from Sword Coast Adventures Guide. So you can basically have a flying tiefling. And same with the Aasimar, the 5th level, you can remove certain traits to sprout feathery wings, which grant a fly speed of 30 feet. And this doesn't count for your +1s, for your player's handbook +1. So I could be like Sword Coast, or I could be, Player's Handbook and Xanathar's Guide, and then I could be a flying tiefling from that, or Aasimar or something like that. And so I'm wondering, there must be something with the Descent that deals with heights, and not everybody has a climbing speed and things like that. And so they decided, like, or maybe it's just finally time to introduce this. But I thought it was interesting that they were like, no, you can get this flying characters now, but they didn't say anything about Aarakocra. So I don't know. Thoughts? Or am I reading this wrong? I'm confused.
No, yeah, I think what they're going to, I think it's their first attempt to start adding in special things that are going to be season 9, so that it stands out from, say, season 10, season 11, or season 12. And they might do that by mixing around racial traits. They might be doing it with class things that could be, just little things that make the season stand out as a modifier to the season, so it plays a little bit differently than the others. So I think that's kind of the first thing, because I did notice in the guide when it talked about characters that could fly, like it still says the same thing it said before in that AL players guide. If I bring it up real quick, it said, I'm pretty sure it said you couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, it did. But for season 9, you can get these seasonal racial traits.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just really interesting where it's like, I can't be an Aarakocra, but I can get these at fifth level. I can do this. So there's something that happens at 5th level, but they don't want you playing an Aarakocra at level 1 that can fly.
Yeah. Note, races with flight at 1st level and options from any resources other than those listed above aren't available without specific campaign documentation.
Yeah.
Some season 9 characters may develop wings after 1st level. See appendix.
So I thought that was interesting. And Joel here says in the YouTube chat that Aarakocra are still only for special unlocks for GMs during certain events.
Right.
And that he also says that season 8 was by objective 2. So maybe, and I mean, we haven't played season 8, so maybe we're wrong, but
no, we're not.
Oh, okay.
Joel's half right, because you could have objectives that could award you treasure points, but you also went by time played, also awarded.
Gotcha.
You got both at the same time. Whereas now it looks like they're getting away from the time requirement in season 9 and only sticking to objectives and story points inside the module itself. So it's getting away from I spent 4 hours playing, so that gives me a half a point of a treasure or whatever it was. And looking at the graphic, it talks, it doesn't say that you can't, seasonality doesn't retire any of your characters. You're not getting rid of them if you have a season 1 through 8. It just means it limits what rewards they can get from a storyline aspect, because you can't use the storyline rewards of 9 for those characters. So you can still play.
Really, they're trying to stop you from taking magic items from Tomb of Annihilation and taking them into Waterdeep or not Waterdeep, but Descent into Avernus, I guess. Avernus.
Yeah. Because it says you can't earn magic item unlocks or story rewards from season 9, DDAL, DDEP, or hardcovers. And the other X, it says access to seasonal 9 racial unlocks. Other than that, you have a green thumb, or you get all the other stuff. So those are the only 2 things you're not getting by playing a legacy character in a Descent to Avernus Adventure League adventure. So it's confusing. I think it's just because we're at a turnover point. As the years go by, maybe it'll become less confusing as they get down the process that they want. But again, I think the whole process is tough anyways, because how do you create a system that lets you drop in, drop out with characters who are going to go from convention to convention to convention, make a rule set that works for that, but then also have that rule set make sense for the group that's just going to play every Friday night and they're just going to play Adventure League at their house or at their game store. And it's the same party. Nobody drops in or drops out. Nobody changes. That is very different, yet they're trying to build a tool set or a rule set that allows convention play and store play and group play all work at the same time. So I think it's it's tough for them to do it. I wouldn't be able to figure it out any easier than they would, I'm sure. So.
Yeah. Nope, for sure. And then coming up, not next week, but the week after, we get the Acquisitions Incorporated book that comes out on June 18th. So,
10 days from now.
Yeah, 10 days, which is, I said it again and I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's the book I didn't know I wanted, but I want more than any other book. And there's going to be new, I think did they say races or jobs? Anyway.
Definitely jobs. There are jobs.
But if you've read Ghosts of Saltmarsh, they pretty much have a whole list of specs for here's your position on a boat. And here's what you can do with your abilities as captain or as skipper. I forget all of the different ones you can be. And they have a similar thing with Acquisitions Incorporated. So within the structure of Ac Inc., you can be the boss or you can be the subordinate or whatever else, and you get different bonuses based on that, etc. So it's kind of similar. I think it's going to be really awesome, and I'm excited for that. Yep. Super excited.
So that'd be the 18th. Then the very next week after that, that's like a Wednesday, I think is the 18th when it drops, at least midweek, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. Then the D&D Essentials should drop at Target on the 24th. And it's one thing I wanted to go out and get. I think they said it was $19.99 was going to be the price. So $20. I think I'm going to run out and grab that. And I heard them say one more thing that was interesting to me about D&D Essentials, which is kind of another beginner box set, is that they said when they designed Phandelver, they mostly thought of the Dungeon Master in mind, and then letting the Dungeon Master present the game to new people, but also to help a new Dungeon Master. Mm-hmm. When they designed D&D Essentials, it was more player focused, and the Dungeon Master was an afterthought. So it's not so much a great box set for a brand new Dungeon Master as it was a great box set for a bunch of brand new players. So I thought that was an interesting difference, or at least a different focus on the way they wrote it. So I'm really curious to see what it is. I'm definitely going to pick it up on the 24th.
Yeah, it sounds Chris Perkins adventure. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that me and Jordan work out this. We'll play one-on-one, because I think it'd be really cool to see how a one-on-one game.
Yeah, we could definitely try that out. Yes, I've got a busy schedule, but I will make time.
It's on tape. He can't back out now.
But that could be really fun. So
those are the big releases for June. We do have some stuff coming up in July, but I figured I would just put those in the July show notes so that when we see those popping up, we'll let you guys know of the new stuff that's coming. So the couple of things. So just recap: Ac Inc. book is coming. We already got Salt Marshes out. You can get it. The variant cover, I saw it at my game store, is still there. They still have some on the shelf, or you can buy it. And I always want to say Secrets of Salt Marsh, because that's just the way I always remember it. Secrets of Salt Marsh, Acquisition Inc., and we get a D&D Essentials box set all in June. So it's going to be a good month for June for Dungeons.
For sure.
Other than that, mine was, I'll let you go. I mean, I like to figure out what happened with Jordan's playing the Salt Marsh.
Yep, running it.
Module. So let's hear how all that went.
Well, so I think last time we talked, I almost killed my players because they were level 1. Yeah. And it reminds me again that I just never want to start at level 1. Level 3, level 2 seems like okay, but like level 1, because you get from level 1 to level 2 so quickly, it's almost like, why did we even start you at level 1? So if you have experienced players, I think I'm always just going to start at level 2, even though it's a level 1 adventure. It just kind of doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know. So they are level 2 and decided to, they were stuck in a basement and they decided to explore the rest of the house. And they kind of like got off track a little bit. And I had to remind them that I'm like, you're not here to just like destroy skeletons and things like that. Like there's rumors that there's like bandits and stuff that are using this as a hideout. So you need to explore and you need to investigate rooms. And you need to look for clues. And they were like, oh, okay. And there was somebody that I was talking to a couple of days ago that's running this too. And I asked them, like, what did you think of The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, which is the first little bit. And she was saying that she's like, it's kind of like Scooby-Doo. Like, we're kind of like we're investigating a ghost house, but we're all really weak in level 1 and level 2. And so we don't really know what's happening. And it's like, whoa, there's spiders in the fireplace. Oh no. And like running down hallways and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really good way of putting it.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. And so it's our Scooby-Doo campaign, but they're having fun. They ended up exploring some more and found some of these bandits that they're looking for. And hilarity ensued with that, and now we ended with them taking a short rest, and I have the difficult position as a dungeon master where do I say that the monsters are right around the corner and walk in on them on their short rest, or do I give them their hour and say that these guys were also preoccupied with something?
Level 1s, boy.
Well, now they're level 2. They are level 2 right now because our last session we played their level 2. But I'm like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was in a tough situation. I'm still in a tough situation because we're going to play in a couple of weeks and I need to come up
We
with
let
that.
the dice gods decide.
I guess I could, yeah, and just be like, do they hear you? Kind of like roll perception checks. And maybe that's what I'll do. But they're hurting right now, which is why they took a short rest. They wanted to spend some of their hit dice and try to like heal up a little bit. So I don't know if I'm going to I haven't decided yet. So we'll see. But that's what I'm doing. And then, yeah, still playing my Warforged game, which is the one I'm playing today. And that one's been a lot of fun. And we're just kind of plucking along. It's hard to really talk about that one because there's a whole bunch of stuff that even I'm kind of confused about. but there's like evil drow and they're using these weird books to reanimate the dead, and we ended up fighting a dragon and things like that. One thing that came away from the last session that we played is one of our warlock has a spell called, I think it's called Delay Death, and it's from a third-party supplement. So they bought some of these third-party supplements from the DMSGuild, and they've incorporated these spells into their campaign. But what it does is it stops you from dying, basically. When you go to 0 hit points, you're still conscious and you're still able to like function, and you don't outright die unless you follow that rule where if you take your exact hit points of damage when you're at 0, then you just outright die. And I was talking to them, and they originally thought that it was balanced because they thought like, well, when you're level 4 and you use this and you've got like 20 hit points, it seems really easy for a monster to be able to do 20 hit points to you and just kill you outright. So there's this danger threshold. But what I was telling them is that I feel like it doesn't give you temporary hit points, quote, temporary hit points, but it does give you this buffer of now you're level 9, you've got 56 hit points. Not a lot of monsters are doing 56 hit points worth of damage in one shot. So you're basically like, oh, you took 20, now you're back to 0. Oh, you took 30, now you're back to 0. So you have this weird buffer of like 50. And I was telling them, I'm like, guys, I think it's broken. Like, I don't want to be like, this, you're on my team, like we're all on the same team. But if I was running this game, I would not allow this spell because it just seems really broken. So the compromise that they've done is now it's going to, because the warlock really likes this spell, and it's the other dungeon master's game, so he can run his game however he wants ultimately. But we were talking about it, and I think they're going to do that. It requires concentration now. So now if they lose concentration, the guy just drops immediately to like unconscious. And I was like, okay, that seems a little better, because before it was like he was casting it on like 2 or 3 people and just people weren't dying. And our warlock ended up being the tank because he just couldn't die. And my Warforged with 22 AC doesn't get hit at all because they're all going after this warlock. I don't know. So, but do you allow third-party stuff like that? Have you ever done other magic items or spells or things like that?
Well, of course, because I allow strongholds and followers, which I
you
love from Matt Coville, and it's a lot of stuff in there. But he does a really good job in the very beginning of the book, right towards the first couple of pages, that says this could unbalance your campaign. The stuff we put in here is powerful. It gives them some really big bonuses, and you do need to make adjustments to make it work in your campaign.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'm pretty careful about what I add. Many of the games I've run, I try to run pretty vanilla, because if I'm going to put them online, I want people to be able to see what the vanilla game is without it being just crazily hacked into something different.
Right.
Though I do like, the addition of different classes or rules that maybe they don't have yet. I think that's kind of cool. I was thinking about what you said there, is that the other problem I see with that spell, one, it can be cast on more than one person. The minute you said that sounded way broken to me. Number 2, most dungeon masters won't run monsters when they hit somebody and they're at 0 to continue hitting them when they go unconscious. So they stay unconscious for their death saves. But you're pulling out the whole death save mechanic. You're pulling out the whole the player goes down mechanic. I don't know why you would want to do that. I don't know why. It's almost like the character can't go unconscious at that point from taking severe.
No, and that's exactly what the spell is. You don't go unconscious when you get to 0 hit points. You just stay at 0 and you're able to still function and move around. But like, I don't know. And
then the rule that they
it seems like there needs
says,
to be a negative there, and there's just nothing but positives with this spell.
Yeah. and because you take out that part, what balanced that was what balances death saves. You go unconscious and you get 3 death saves. You roll a 1, you come back up to 1 hit point. Is this idea that if you take a single blow that's more than your hit points, then that's your you've taken so much damage to your death, right? So that rule works well when it's connected with 3 death saves, possible 1 brings you up, or fails make you die.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that piece out, then I think you have to modify this piece, which says, I think you have to make all that damage accumulative. So if they get hit by 2 or 3 attacks, all that should add up. And if that gets higher than a certain number, and it probably shouldn't be their total once again per round, it should be once that hits, once you get that much, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
No death saves,
Mm-hmm.
no bringing you back, type thing, if they want to put that type of danger in. So it sounds like
or keep the death saves in, and you can get hit 3 times, and then you're dead.
Yeah.
You
I would have to read how they're playing it, because maybe they read it and didn't even play it right in the first place.
No, I think they are. I think it's just a broken spell, but
or it could be just broken. But yeah, because that sounds way kind of out of line to me. Like your warlock can't stand in front and just take a hit after hit after hit, but continue to return to 0 hit points and still function.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So, well, and I'm curious to see going forward, we're going to play tonight, if this concentration means that it works out a little better. But
and how long does the spell last?
I think a minute. Like
10 rounds of combat.
Yeah.
Woo. That's I can't believe anybody didn't see that was broken.
Yeah. Well, but it's third-party stuff. Like people are just trying to sell books,
Yeah,
and so they'll put anything in it. And I look at that and I'm just like, nobody play tested this, but I don't know. And I shouldn't. I don't know what supplement it's from, and I don't want to poo-poo on their stuff, because they probably have other awesome things. But it's just something that I was like, yeah, I don't think I'd allow this at my table. But that's just Jordan. So.
Well, even to say that, I also used on mine Gods and Goddesses from Jetpack 7. Put out a book that has some extra gods and goddesses in it. You can be a paladin or a cleric of them, and you get some other stuff if you choose to be a paladin or a cleric. And some of those were pretty on the strong side also. So when I let my players use them, me and the player talk through it and say, okay, this is what I think the rule does, even before we get into combat, even before we kind of talk it out and say, this is what I think it's supposed to do. This is how I think you're supposed to be using it. If at some point you find some combination that's just going to break this, like you find something we're not thinking about, we have to be ready to adjust. Because I want their buy-in to say, right, if it's going to unbalance things, but we don't find out about it until we're 10 sessions in or until we're 12th level, and then we realize why it's going to be broken, I want them already to have agreed back when we said we're going to use it. Oh yeah, if it starts to break the game, we're going to make a change. So I'll let you use it. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. But if it starts to break the game, we need to come up with a better way to do it.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's what they said. The Dungeon Master said, well, we were going to let you have this spell, but we need to play test it and see if it works. And now adding concentration is the one where we're going to play it again and see if that makes it a little more balanced. But yeah, like I said, it's not my game. So I'm just kind of like, well, if you want my input, I'll give you my input. But ultimately, whatever you want to do in your game.
That's the funny thing, Jordan, that you keep saying it's not my game, but it is your game.
Well, yeah.
The players who play in the game are as much allowed to decide what rules we're going to play on as the Dungeon Master. Sometimes we always think it's the Dungeon Master who makes those decisions. Everybody has to follow it. But in reality, we all decide what rules we're going to play by and how we're going to play by them, and we should all be agreeing to the rules that we play by. So I really think,
and I agree,
it's really good that you, yeah.
But at the same time, like,
I know you don't want to step on another Dungeon Master game. Yeah, I get that.
At the same time, I just want to point this out. Like, it's not like if all, like, we'll use this spell, for example, and let's say all 4 players are just like, we like this spell, and the Dungeon Master's like, well, I don't. I think it's broken. ultimately the dungeon master has the rule of saying, I don't want this broken spell in my game, even though the majority of the quote players at the table wanted this spell, and so that's why I keep saying it's like, well, it's, Nathan's game. If he wants to run that, he can run that. So
yeah, I just think I don't think we keep going into it.
Yeah, no, we're good. What did you do in games? That's all I'm doing.
What did I do? Well, I restarted my Seeking Revenant game because we switched it from the West Marches style, which was a game where we tried to make every session end the same night. So if they went out, they did something cool, they made it back to town that same night. I could mix and match players, which allowed me to bring other players in who couldn't make it. So then we had lots of different groups going out. I could run multiple groups during the week and they could all affect the same world. So it's all kinds of cool things that make sense, but it's also all kinds of restrictions that start to happen when you do play that style. And so a lot of times the adventures you're creating, if you're only going to do a 3-hour session, you can only really get so much done. You can't do a 4-layer dungeon if you're going to send them back to town by the end of the night. And the reason you do that is because somebody might not make it next week, so we could bring a different player in, and it all makes sense in the narrative of it. So we did that for a while. I liked it. I think we played a really good set of games that way. And I think the system worked and could continue to work. The reason I switched it was I'm playing in a Wednesday and a Thursday night game, and now I'm going to run the Monday night game for mine. That style, that West Marches style game works the best when you can run multiple games during the week. But now if I'm playing in 2 and I'm running one, I'm running out of days and time to actually play more than one game or host more than one game. So it didn't make sense to stay with the West Marches style. I love that I tried it out. I thank all the players in the community that helped us play it. We've created a really cool story on the server, and we're still following it. So there's a group of players that are going to continue on. We had a big climactic opening scene with a dragon attacking Port Bastion and a new player coming in on the sea who had just gotten there, and their ship gets set on fire. And we have a powerful mage blast the dragon to drive it away. We have a mystery of why all of a sudden the dragon knows that Port Bastion's there, when all this other time we've set up in the narrative that the dragon would fly over, but never seemed to notice Port Bastion was there. There was something keeping the creatures in the surrounding area from knowing that there's this community building up. So they weren't being attacked, but something happened that's changed, and that's where the storyline's going from there. And we're going to have a nice party viewpoint of that moving forward to see where this goes. And it's a really fun thing because I feel like our community, most of the players that were in it came from the Saturday morning D&D show community. So there were many people in there that helped create some of the storyline that we have right now. And so it's kind of cool to keep following that on and keep pushing it. So it was really fun. The big thing is now it's back to a regular campaign. So we started a fight and we ended because it was 11 o'clock. I did put the recording up so people can go watch it. We'll start hosting it live again on my channel pretty quick here. But we were 2 rounds into the combat, but it was time to stop the session. So we said, okay, we'll pick up next week right back here, which is really cool. So we can continue that combat and see where this group goes. I think we're going to have a really good time. I think the big thing I'm learning from it is the different styles of Dungeons and Dragons you can play also can vary depending on the amount of time you have to play. I've been talking to a lot of other people like recently where we're kind of like nostalgically talking about how we used to play games or how we used to get together. And we really came from, and I wonder if this was true for you too, we came from this idea of we might not get to play every single week, but maybe we played every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, but we played for much longer time. So it was like a lot of the people I'm talking about, they were like, we played for 6, 7, or 8 hours. So they got a ton done when they did get together, though they didn't get together as often. Whereas now the types of games I play, we're getting together often, but it's shorter periods. So it really is affecting the types of games we play and how we play them. So I was just wondering, like for your groups and the way you've played over the last, however many years, has that changed for you? Are you playing shorter sessions? Are you playing longer sessions? Do we know how long your sessions? I think have we ever even mentioned how long is your Sunday game or how long was your Saturday game?
2 to 3 hours is what we usually play, with probably more often than not, if you count actually like just goofing off and chatting with each other about like, hey, how are you doing? We actually only really play for 2, maybe 2.5 hours.
Okay, so pretty short.
So they are pretty short, and I would actually like to play longer. But I understand that some of my players, like we play on Wednesdays, and by the time my players can get to my house at 6:30, we only really play till 9 because they have to go home and put their kids to bed and do a bunch of other, like they're just busy people. And on the weekends we play for usually 3 hours, sometimes 3.5 hours, because we have a little more flexibility to play on the weekends. But ultimately that was set by my players. Like I was like, I'd love to play 4 to 5 hour games, honestly, because I just like D&D and I wouldn't mind, but they get a little burnt out after like 3 hours, I think. And so we played.
So have you always played that length of a session, or was there a time where you did play longer sessions?
No, it's always been that. And like,
oh, interesting.
And even if we didn't play for 3 weeks, like nobody wants to play for 8 hours to try and like catch up. So we only ever play for, well, the of my players, sorry.
Right.
Present company excluded. So,
right.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's what's interesting to me, because we used to play long sessions, but less often, like we were saying. So you could get through like a whole adventure booklet in the Saturday that you played. So like when you were buying those old adventures and you were going to play through one of them, you were able to play through one of them in one sit down. Now it was a long session and you ordered pizza midway, or you got food and there was a lot of other stuff going on and we took breaks and stuff, but it definitely was like a full day event. Whereas now it feels like I'm trying to fit it in like after work, like you're saying. So, we meet up at 8:30 at night so everybody can put their kids in bed. They're all done, but we don't want to play past 11 or 12 because most of us got to get up early in the morning to go to work. So right now I'm getting about that 2.5 to 3 hour session also in most of my game playing. But I feel like I miss a little bit those big long sessions.
I'd love to have like a birthday, and maybe we should do something like this online where it's like, hey, it's Jordan's birthday. We're going to play D&D for like a marathon 7 hours or something.
Yeah.
Like that could be a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, we used to do it with LAN games, right? We used to say, hey, everybody bring your computers over. We're going to set up a little LAN in our living room, and we're going to play StarCraft against each other. And we'd play the whole weekend, and then everybody would go away. I wonder if I should try, like you said, host that or try something like that with D&D where we play a nice, big, long Dungeons and Dragons session. Because really think about what that means is all of your dungeon mastering skills, all of your ability to run a game is based around a 3-hour slot at this point. It changes when all of a sudden you need a 6-hour slot or you need an 8-hour slot to fill up what you're going to do in your campaign. That's a lot different. So I wonder too if, practicing that or trying to play that would be interesting and would give us different DM skills that maybe we haven't really been using as much because we've been doing shorter session, Twitch style session, YouTube style sessions, or kind of like, I think even Critical Role plays, do they play for 3 hours or they play for 4?
Critical Role, they usually play for 3.5 to 4 hours. So
3.5 to 4. So theirs is a long game, really. I mean, that's interesting. All right. Well, that was the big thing that I thought would be interesting to think about, and maybe we could try in the future also. A nice marathon set of games would be fun. I want to do the one-on-one at some point. I think that'd be cool. But I'm having a lot of fun with all of the games we're playing. Wednesday and Thursday did get rescheduled, so I did not play Tomb of Annihilation. I did not play Horde of the Dragon Queen, though I'm excited to get back to them. The Artificer, they had more Q&A on the Artificer this week, though. They spent most of the episode talking about Bart Carroll's birthday, which was kind of funny, but it ate up a lot of their time to talk about the Artificer. But they did go back into the Artificer and answer some more questions. It sounds like, here's something that they kind of said towards the end that you may not have caught. The Homunculus may not make it.
Yeah, I saw that. And I like that a lot. I'm really upset.
For those of you who have not filled out the survey, but you like the Homunculus, maybe you could fill out a survey and say how much you like it to maybe change their mind, because it might not show up in the next edition based on the other subclasses that were more popular. So fill out that survey if you haven't, and tell them what you think. So I think that's pretty cool. So I think that was about it for my game playing. Nice. I'm excited for the upcoming week. I think we'll be playing on Monday night, and then we'll see if I think I think we're playing Wednesday and Thursday, but we'll see. If not, then I'm going to be out at my pool, hanging out, doing some swimming because it's been pretty cool. In fact, right after this, because it's so hot in here from my studio lights and everything, I'm going to go take a swim. So
that's awesome.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
What about ending our show, Jordan?
What?
What about ending the show? Are we
what
ready
about ending the show?
this?
But really quick, I wanted to say that Skull Dixon pointed out that we think this spell is from Frog God Games' 5e book called Book of Lost Spells. And I actually own that PDF, so I looked it up, and Delay Death is in there, but the way it's worded is that a creature still makes death saving throws if it gets attacked. So if you get attacked, and if you make 3 of them, you just automatically fall. That I like. But you don't automatically fail death saving throws when you take damage, but you still have to make a death save every time you take damage.
So to me, the death save mechanic stays.
Yeah. And that's what we haven't been playing with. So I don't know if it's from this book or from a different one, but I'm going to check today because I'm curious, and I'll have a follow-up since this was really interesting. People were really interested in this spell. I will have a follow-up, and we'll check it out for next
And it's
time.
not, like you said, it's not to bag on somebody's third party. No. They may have created something that is pretty powerful.
I love Book of Lost Spells,
They may say, hey, this stuff's pretty powerful. Be sure you're ready for it, because they probably say that in the book. I just think it was interesting to look into the mechanic. It's an interesting discussion.
Yep. Other than that, I am playing today at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Greyhawk channel. If you want to come watch me flail around with my poor role-playing skills, I will be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And with that, I think we're done. I should probably...
You have a voice? You do a voice?
I'm working on it. I'm debating.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm debating if because I made my character like 25 years old, and I'm like, what if I make him like 80? That sounds fun. Maybe I'll be an 80-year-old cleric who's just like, oh, Saint Cuthbert. But
Cuthbert's so good. That's so iconic, Greyhawk too.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
So
so anyway, yeah, with that, we will see you guys next week with another episode of the. Well, maybe we'll see you next week. Lucian might not be here, so stay tuned. We'll see.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll find a guest host or something. But anyway, with that, we'll see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye, everybody.